President Biden is holding a high-stakes meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in California's Bay Area this afternoon.
That's right. It is the first meeting for the two leaders in about a year. The summit is happening on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Conference in San Francisco. However, Biden and Xi are meeting about 30 miles south of there in Woodside.
CBS News Chief Foreign Affairs correspondent and Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan joins us now from our Washington bureau to speak about this one-on-one. Margaret, National Security Council coordinator for Indo-Pacific Affairs Kurt Campbell tells our Wei Zhang that having this meeting itself is the deliverable. What does that tell us about the deterioration of relationships between the U.S. and China and what can be accomplished today?
Well, the idea is that if you're talking, at least then you're not fighting. That's how bad things are, or have been. It has been 8 months in the making just to get this meeting to happen. It's been a flurry of diplomacy back and forth between Beijing and Washington, with the Treasury Secretary of State and others really trying to lay the groundwork for this leaders' meeting. And the reason it's so important is because of exactly what Kurt Campbell laid out to Wei Zhang, which is Xi Jinping has concentrated power in his hands. He is the autocrat. All major decisions go through him. And so it has to be at this leader level in order to make some headway. And this is significant to see him arriving on U.S. soil in this degree of outreach. You know, for years during the pandemic, Xi Jinping didn't leave China, period. He rarely goes overseas. So this is significant for this meeting to happen face to face. And at a minimum, the White House is saying they want to restore those military to military ties. Now, that's not going to be at the defense minister level, because there is no defense minister. The last one disappeared without explanation. Xi Jinping has been doing that. He disappeared the foreign minister, who has now been replaced. Qin Gang is now unaccounted for. It is Wang Yi who is in that role. It gives you an idea of the type of ruler Xi Jinping is and the lack of visibility there is into his government. So having the eye-to-eye, face-to-face conversation is why it is so key to try to manage this so that there isn't direct conflict.
It's very interesting, Margaret, and really important, in part because China is the world's second largest economy, the U.S. being the first. So how does China's economic concerns, their slowing growth, factor into today's meeting, as well as the backdrop of what we see happening in the United States?
These are the two economic giants. And so they are incredibly intertwined as well. That is what's so hard about this challenge when people talk about, oh, another Cold War. The Cold War was easy compared to this. Our economies, our financial systems are so intertwined, and the competition is happening at that level. It's happening in the technology space. When it comes to China's slowing economic growth, President Biden is sort of describing this as a point of leverage. Last night in his speech, he said they got problems. What he's pointing to there is that Xi Jinping, while he is in San Francisco, will be meeting with a number of top executives from U.S. investment firms, from U.S. corporations, trying to restore some confidence in his economy and lure back international investment. Some of it has been a bit stalled because of the slowing growth, the concern there post-pandemic about some of the restrictions put in, the new national security laws that have really allowed for the kind of scrutiny of accounting firms and consulting firms that led to police raids by the Chinese government on some U.S. firms. It's also a concern around the export controls that the United States, the federal government, has put in to try to restrict sensitive technology sales to China. And that has really frustrated Beijing. So this is really a key part of the conversation around China. It's no longer just the world's Walmart in terms of cheap manufacturing of goods. It is a direct competitor to the United States, including in the technology space. And that is why the Biden administration has focused in there. Our Richard Escobedo has done some great reporting over some of the meetings Xi Jinping will be having later today and why executives are clamoring to get that FaceTime with him.
Also including some of his old friends from Iowa, going back to his agricultural roots there as well.
Yeah, and just think about TikTok, another social media platform young people are fascinated by, and the controversy on that being on U.S. devices.
Yeah.
So many topics that, what's interesting, Margaret, as you spell this out, is you'd be hard-pressed to find any region in the world where the U.S. and China are on the same page of conflicting issues. In what ways might the wars in Ukraine and now Israel play in today's meeting?
These are two geopolitical powerhouse nations, and for the Biden administration, they would like to clear all decks and solely focus on China because they are viewing it as the prime strategic adversary of the United States of America over the long term. This is the conflict they see happening for the next few generations, and they see it playing out in the technology space and other venues, not necessarily just a traditional military clash. It is so complex. And one of the things that Xi Jinping has done in recent years is start to try to realign things, according to the Biden administration's analysis, so that there are power centers away from the United States. Xi Jinping really embracing Vladimir Putin before that invasion of Ukraine, and he has stood by him despite the Western world really standing up in protest and trying to draw a stark line there. Xi Jinping continues to buy Iran's oil despite international sanctions. Why? Because he can get it on the cheap. He is putting aside the fact that there are international sanctions on Iran due to human rights, due to the nuclear program, due to other things. So these kind of choices that he is making are undermining what foreign policy nerds would call the global international world order that has ruled for the past 80 years. China's trying to rewrite those rules. And that's why the Biden administration says that they are the only strategic adversary in the world with both the capability and the intent to undo that global order.
You can see right now some live pictures coming out of Woodside, California, where any moment now we expect that those leaders will converge. So significant, Margaret, as you're laying out for us. There's also another very sticky issue that foreign policy nerds are certainly going to be watching. 3 Americans that the State Department has determined are wrongfully detained by China. Do you expect that President Biden will bring this up with President Xi today?
The White House has not said whether or not. The State Department does bring it up frequently. The U.S. ambassador to China, Nick Burns, brings it up. I spoke to him about this when I was in Beijing in June. These 3 Americans, Mark Swidon of Texas, he has been there for a decade. He's facing a death sentence there on what the U.S. says are false charges. David Lin and Kai Li, 2 other Americans there. And we do know the U.S. continues to press for their release, but it's not clear that there will be a breakthrough on this front. It is worth underscoring. There are others, by the way, in China that the U.S. constantly raises the issue of who are just not allowed to leave the country. So they're not behind bars, but they can't leave, and they're called exit bans. That's something else the United States consistently draws issue with at the diplomatic level. So we will see if President Biden can get that deal. And I should say, in direct answer to your last question, the United States is most immediately concerned that China could sell arms or weapons to Russia. They haven't seen evidence of that yet. And in terms of the Middle East, there is some pressure there that President Biden will try to put on for Xi Jinping to try to use its influence with Iran. I mentioned those oil sales. Iran needs some clients. And so if China can use its economic heft, its financial heft, he's going to ask them to do that.
All right. Margaret Brennan, thank you very much.